There are mornings when I wake up and feel that something inside me has grown quiet as a Japanese street in the early morning fog. Yesterday I was still full of determination, ready to guide my life into a new rhythm. But overnight, something faded away, silently and invisibly, like a light that someone dimmed. I sit in front of my tasks and wonder why my mind suddenly feels heavy. The worst part isn't the emptiness, but the moment I ask myself, why does my will collapse exactly when I need it the most? And the surprising thing is, this feeling doesn't mean something is wrong with me. In Japan, people often say that even the strongest bamboo bends in the wind without breaking. The problem isn't willpower, but an ancient mechanism inside me that values safety more than change. When motivation fades, my inner system pulls me back into the familiar, like a traveler seeking the nearest shelter when the rain begins to fall. It's biology, not character. When motivation fades, my mind follows a logic rooted deeper than I ever understood. It seeks what is easy, what is familiar. Almost like the way Japanese monks draw lines in a Zen garden, always following the path of least resistance in the sand. Every task that looks demanding gets marked by my brain as danger. That's why I hesitate, even when I know the next step would be the right one. This inner mechanism intensifies when I set big goals. My mind doesn't see the outcome. It only sees the distance to it, like a hiker looking up a long Japanese mountain trail and suddenly losing all strength. Tiredness, distraction, and lack of desire don't come from weakness, but from an overwhelm I never consciously chose. And this is exactly where the wisdom of Japanese micro-habits begins to work. They bypass the resistance because they are so small that my nervous system remains calm. 1 minute of writing, 2 minutes of tidying. Just a tiny step. So small that my inner protection mechanism stays silent. In Japan, they say, the river defeats the stone through patience, not force. That's precisely how these micro-habits work. Quiet, gentle, and unstoppable. I begin to understand that I didn't fail because of a lack of motivation. I simply tried to rely on a force that is naturally short-lived. In Japanese culture, progress is not seen as a sprint, but as a silent rhythm. A movement carried by daily routine, not by emotion. When I understand that big change is built from small rituals, the pressure to be strong all the time dissolves. I no longer see myself as someone who repeatedly fails, but as someone who needs a system that holds me even when my motivation disappears. Like a quiet temple that remains standing even in a storm. There are 6 Japanese micro-habits that carry me even when my motivation has long disappeared. They don't work through strength, but through silence. Not through big steps, but through those tiny movements that remain almost invisible in everyday life. And that's exactly why they are reliable. They work with my mind, not against it, creating a rhythm that feels like a quiet pulse, accompanying me every day. The first habit is Kaizen, the idea of continuous, small improvement. When I aim only to be minimally better than yesterday, there is no inner resistance. 1 minute of writing, 1 paragraph of reading. A small step so tiny that my brain doesn't perceive it as a threat. In Japan, they say that even a 1,000-mile journey begins with a single humble step, and it is precisely this humble step that opens the door. The second habit is Shoshin, the beginner's mind. When I allow myself to feel like a beginner, I don't expect perfection. I look at my tasks with curiosity, not with fear. Every mistake becomes part of learning, not a sign of failure. This attitude makes me lighter, freer, and braver, because I don't have to prove anything to anyone, not even to myself. The third habit is called Hitori time, a short moment of being alone that works like an inner temple. Just a few minutes of silence are enough to calm my overstimulated mind. I breathe, I sit, I listen to the room. Nothing more. This tiny pause acts like a reset that brings me back to my center. When my inner world becomes clearer, I can act more consistently. The fourth habit is the Miyagi method, inspired by the idea of creating order in small spaces. I don't begin by cleaning an entire room. I start with one single square of order. One corner, one drawer, one stack. In Japan, people believe that outer clarity creates inner clarity. When I tidy something small, I immediately feel a shift in my mind, and the weight of chaos lifts just a little. The fifth habit is the senpai schedule, the practice of making tomorrow a little easier today. When I prepare my workspace, lay out my clothes, or write down 3 small tasks, I create a gentle path for my future self. The next day no longer begins in the fog, but with a soft sense of orientation. And when the beginning is easy, everything else becomes easier too. The sixth habit is Tanoshimi, the daily small joy. In a culture that values simplicity, people understand that joy doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. A warm cup of tea, a glance at the evening sky, a short walk, a moment that touches my soul. These small islands of pleasure keep me steady. Without joy, discipline dries out. With joy, it comes alive. These 6 habits work like a quiet Japanese rhythm that carries me through difficult days. They don't make me faster, but more consistent. Not louder, but clearer. And perhaps this is exactly what I needed all these years, a system that doesn't wait for me to be strong, but strengthens me the moment I begin. Despite all this wisdom, I still stumble over the same obstacles. One of the biggest mistakes is expecting change to appear quickly. But in Japan, people know that even the cherry tree needs a full year before it blossoms again. Progress cannot be forced. Another mistake is wanting to change everything at the same time. Too many goals make my mind heavy, like a backpack that becomes fuller with every step. I don't fail because I'm incapable. I fail because I try to carry too much in too little time. And then there is comparison. When I see how fast others progress, I forget that every person walks a path uniquely their own, like a garden path in Kyoto that never repeats itself exactly. As soon as I stop comparing, I find my rhythm again. Maybe it is especially important now to remember something often said in Japan. The path belongs to the one who stays on it, not the one who runs the fastest. Change does not require strength, it requires stillness. This quiet willingness to move forward a tiny bit each day, even when my inner world has grown silent. You don't need to be perfect, unshakable, or full of energy. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to be slow. Even a quiet step has weight. And sometimes it is exactly that quiet step that carries you back into life. It isn't a weakness that your motivation fades. In Japanese culture, setbacks aren't seen as defeat, but as part of the rhythm. A breath goes in and out. A wave pulls back before it returns stronger. You function according to the same principles. You are not broken. You are a human being who is learning to guide yourself with kindness, without pressure, without noise, without attacking yourself. And if you realign yourself just a little each day, your path will become clearer than you can imagine today. When I look at all these small steps, I realize that it's not just about habits, it's about who I become while repeating them. In Japan, people say that the path shapes the person, not the other way around. And maybe this is where a new truth begins for you. You are not someone desperately trying to be consistent. You are someone learning to grow in your own rhythm. You no longer need to overwhelm yourself to appear strong. Your strength lies in the quiet, in the tiny movements that no one sees except you. Every small step changes the way you perceive yourself, and eventually, you realize that you have long been the person who keeps going, even on the days when motivation is gone. If this thought touches you, then let's continue this path together, not as pressure, but as a quiet promise to yourself. If you wish, walk with me. we can grow a little every day, at a pace that truly belongs to us.